All right, it is 10:01. I guess we better get started. Um, my intention is that everybody here will um, get something that they didn't expect. I'm sure there's a reason why all of you are here on this call, and I'm sure you'll get exactly what you came for, even if it's not what you expected. So let's talk about manifestation. Um, So what we're going to be going over today is a model that I'm calling the manifestation engine. And um, it's very simple, but it took me a really long time to figure out. And where I want to start is let's just start with the basic idea. I'm sure all of you have some at least passing familiarity with this concept of the law of attraction, which is you create your own reality, you get what you think about, and all of that. Um, the world is a mirror. The outer world is a reflection of your inner world. This is probably not anything new for most of the people here. Um, so going from this idea of you get what you think about, it really seems to me the main problem with that is we have absolutely no control over our thoughts. Um, I uh, I heard Hale Dwoskin, the leader of the Sedona Method organization. I heard in a call with him recently, he said, "I've never met anyone who knows what their next thought is going to be." And for those of you here who are familiar with the RRT perspectives, this also isn't anything new for you, that thoughts and feelings all come out of the unconscious mind, and we don't really have much conscious control over any of that. Um, so, how many people watched The Secret and was amazed by this idea that we can just, or like Think and Grow Rich, we can just get stuff by just thinking about it. And I guess if it was as easy as that, or I guess if we did have control over our thoughts, then we'd all be like billionaire sex gods by now or something. Um, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Um, so despite all of these endless self-optimization techniques and various personal improvement tactics, it really seems to me that most people are kind of just going in circles for the most part. They end up with enough results, they see enough results out of these practices to give them some uh, legitimacy to know that there's something to it. Um, but it's pretty rare that I see those like incredible breakthroughs where somebody completely transformed their life. So these are some of the things that we'll be um, taking a deep dive into today. Um, I want to start with just so we're all on the same page um, with some of the basic ideas of how manifestation works. Um, so let's begin with just the concept of energy, how everything is energy, and this energy is vibrating. This isn't even really anything woo-woo or any kind of hocus pocus. This is straight up science. Everything is energy. Energy is vibrating at different frequencies. Um, and our senses then are translators of this vibration. So your eyes, your visual sense is tuned to a specific range of frequencies that we perceive as light. We have the light spectrum, and then we have sound, we have touch, things like that. You can take a big rock, something that seems really solid, and if you zoom in far enough, you see that there's molecules, and then you see there's atoms, and you zoom into that, and you see it's just these like subatomic particles, which turns out not to be particles at all, but just energy vibrating, and it's mostly like empty space. Um, so The manifestation engine then is the way that these vibrations translate through our senses into our actual experience. Um, I want to give you a way of thinking about it, which is gut, heart, mind. This is basically how the sequence of what happens when information comes through your senses. You experience the moment in front of you, it comes through your senses, you see things, you hear things, and first it kind of hits you in the gut. In other words, it first goes through the survival oriented nervous system. It causes this physiological response in the nervous system because the mind cares a whole lot about survival. So it first hits you in the gut. It causes a physiological response, which might be something like tension. If the mind is perceiving a threat, it will first create tension. From the gut, informs then the heart, which leads to an emotion being generated. Out of the heart, then we get the mind. So something disturbing happens, and physical nervous system responds to respond to this threat, which then leads to a disturbed heart, and we get those fearful emotions, let's say. The disturbed heart then enlists the mind for help, and it says, please, mind, help me figure this thing out and help me get away from this threat or defeat it or deal with it in some way. So now we end up with a disturbed mind trying to um, figure out how not to be disturbed, which that usually doesn't work so well. So gut, heart, mind. Next, let's talk about the idea of agreement. If you have any familiarity with ideas of like hypnosis, you're probably familiar with this word agreement. And I'm going to use the word agreement rather than belief, because I found in some conversation we're talking about beliefs and stuff, and people have very different ideas of what a belief is. And sometimes people will say, this is what I experience, even though it's not really what I believe. So when I say belief, what I'm really talking about is agreement. And you're in agreement with everything you perceive. That's why you're perceiving it. So if you look outside the window and you see a tree, you're in agreement with a tree. And you'll notice that on some level, even just seeing a tree with your eyes is operating on that level of belief. Because when you were born, you had no idea what a tree was. And if you saw it, it would just be like this visual data of like brown and green in a particular shape. And you would have no way of processing what it is until somebody teaches you that's a tree. So yeah, we're starting from a very basic level here, where if you're seeing a tree, you're manifesting a tree. So the reason I want to start here is because this is a totally different way of thinking about manifestation. It's not so much in terms of like making a wish or doing some kind of crazy visualization technique and hoping that something happens, or hoping that you get it. It's realizing that, at least from this way of thinking, we can think of it as a manifestational perspective. Every single moment is a manifestation. Every single moment is a synchronicity in that sense. It's the way that energy is being synchronized and perceived in any given moment. So every experience you ever had some effect on you. And all of this accumulated experience is what the mind uses as a reference to process everything new that comes in. So this happens through a process of basically judgment and identification. Every single thing that comes in, the mind judges it, because it first goes through this survival brain. It judges, is this good for my survival? Is it bad for my survival? Is it good or is it bad? And then it sort of picks a side, and things happen determining what do we do about that. So um, I want to try to make that clear, the whole judgment and identification thing. So when there is when the mind is concerned about survival, it really becomes the primary lens that everything gets filtered through. And survival will trump everything else, um, which is why fear, if there's any kind of fear, any kind of anxiety, even anger, won't fold so easily just because you don't like it. If the mind is perceiving a threat, um, I, I think of it, this is I call it like the rattlesnake problem. Um, say you wake up one day and there's a rattlesnake in your bedroom, I bet you can't look away from it. Like no matter how much the guru would tell you, hey, don't worry about it. You just have to surrender. You just let it go. It's like, hey, dude, there's a fucking rattlesnake. And it's like, you can't take your eyes off it. Can't get your mind, even if the rattlesnake's in the next room. Um, hey, Chanel, welcome. um, so, um, yeah, so that's the rattlesnake problem. When the mind is perceiving a threat, it just grabs the mind and sucks it in. It's so distracting that we can't pull away. I find this is really the main problem with these manifestation techniques. You might be able to get into meditation and do your visualization technique and like get in the state of the wish fulfilled and you're feeling really good. Um, and then you go about your day and you meet somebody that kind of reminds you of your ex, you know, or um, they forgot one of the chicken nuggets in your food delivery, and the guy in front of you is driving too slow, and all these different things that the mind, it just grabs the mind. You ever experienced like road rage? Just somebody else on the road that you have absolutely nothing to do with, like no way of controlling that. And as the mind is perceiving that as a threat, this guy is a danger, he's a menace, and all of this rage starts bubbling up. This basically is why manifestation things don't really work out for the most part, is because as much as we can get into that amazing mental emotional state, we constantly get distracted by all of these different things happening, and get kind of sucked into our old patterns. Um, so on top of that, there we got this like judgmental mind that gets born out of this fear-based mind. So it judges every single moment and categorizes it, labels it, and creates further self-judgment, um, especially after you learn about these ideas about law of attraction and manifestation, because now we're supposed to think positive thoughts and we're supposed to feel positive emotions. So now when we notice that we don't, it creates this like self-judgment, and further creates almost like a compulsive avoidance of negative emotional states. um, these teachings, people have been teaching this stuff for a long time, but it's been interpreted through this dualistic judgmental mind, where now feeling bad is bad and feeling good is good. So now if we're feeling bad, we have to punish ourselves for feeling bad, and if we're feeling good, now we have to really try to hold on to that state because this is where we want to be. So now we're afraid of losing it. So you'll notice with this dualistic mind, you really can't win, whether you get what you want or not. This dualistic mind is always calculating, how can I get what I want? How can I avoid what I don't want? If it doesn't get what it wants, it can't handle that. So now it tries to go out of its way to make sure it gets what it wants. But even if it does get what it wants, then Now we got something to lose. Now we got to protect it. Now we got to hold on to it. Now we got to defend it. So it's still not okay. And you're just caught in this hamster wheel. No matter how much the disturbed mind tries to do stuff to get okay, it's never going to be okay because it's coming from this place of not being okay, coming from this place of needing to do something in order to either get okay or stay okay. I hope that makes sense. Um, so all of these, when we really look deeply at why are people doing all of these manifestation practices? Why are they journaling? Why are they doing their affirmations and reading all the books, um, doing all these different things? You'll find that it's still all rooted in wanting to avoid and escape from fear. Why are you wanting to create more money in your life? Because probably you're afraid of what might happen if you don't have any. Um, why do people want to create that perfect relationship, manifest their perfect partner? Because they think if they don't have a perfect partner, they're not okay. So it's all this same kind of engine driving everything, which says, I'm not okay and I need stuff to happen so I can get okay. And once you finally get it, it's like, oh shit, now I might lose it. Um, so this fear was really there the whole time. But now, after learning about things like law of attraction, it created a new channel for that fear to express itself. Um, so what happens then is, and this is kind of the trap because it does work. It does work to some extent. I know several people in this room right now who have had those types of manifestational experiences of maybe they wrote their perfect day, which is something that I teach, or they used some affirmation or whatever practice and something amazing happened. I've had that experience. Many people here have had that experience. But so you see this like increase in synchronicities, a little more ease and flow in your life. You get, good timing in traffic lights and good parking spaces and things like that. But most people never go beyond that level into that real breakthrough that they've been wanting to create. So um, has anybody here had that experience of like really wanting something and then you have that moment of surrender where you say, oh, you just give up, you just go fuck it, and then the thing you really wanted just pops into your reality almost right away? Yeah. Here says Vivian, I forget it and it happens. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. um, if anybody else has had that experience, would you raise your virtual hand? There's a little raise hand there at the bottom. It does like that. Yeah. Okay, so you guys know what I'm talking about. We got a lot of yeses here in the comments. Um, so okay, I want to I want to tell you guys a little story. Um, if you've read my 8 principles of alignment, you might have heard this story before. But there is a very specific reason that we're doing this event today on November 7th. And it all goes back about 10 years. Um, so starting about, I guess it was about February 2014, I was sitting at home, in my mom's basement, 19 years old. I was about to turn 20, just kind of working on my business, trying to make enough money so I could, travel and do the digital nomad thing. That's what I was dreaming of at that time. And then suddenly one day I get this message on Skype from a former client. I hadn't even talked to this guy in about a year, but he just hits me up one day and he says, hey man, do you want to come to Thailand? And I'm like, what? When? And he's like, next week. I'm flying out my whole team to celebrate my birthday. Do you want to come? I'll pay for your ticket. Um, so there I was, 19 years old, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to Thailand. Um, and I distinctly remember that moment, like walking up the stairs to tell my parents that I'm going to Thailand next week, and they're like, what the fuck? Um, so I go on that trip, and um, yeah, so many things happened, and it was the first, like, I'd been wanting to travel, and this had been my dream for such a long time that it was the first time I really got a taste of it. And I remember one day I was walking back to my hotel. It was near the end of my trip, and I had a thought like, holy crap, dude, like, if I really work hard, if I stick to this, then this doesn't have to be a vacation. Like, this could be my life. And that was the thought that really carried me through that whole year. I was really inspired just from being there, or being here rather. Um, and I already decided that during that trip that I wanted to come back. And I was asking people, like, if you could pick 3 months to be in Thailand out of the year, which would be the best months? And most people told me over the winter time, like, say November through February, something like that. So I decided, okay, I'm going to come back. I'm going to skip the next Swedish winter, because who wants to deal with that? And I'm going to come back here in the winter. So I basically still had no money at that time, but I went back home, and it was working all summer, trying to make enough money just to buy a plane ticket. And I think I probably had enough money for the plane ticket around maybe like August or something like that. It was all the money I had. I put all of it on the plane ticket, and I booked it for November, for November 6th, actually. Um, which would, the day I landed would be November 7th. But I thought, until then, I'll have plenty of time to make some more money so I can actually live and survive in Thailand during that time. But then, clock's ticking, and about 2 weeks before the trip, I still had like zero in my account, and I'm starting to freak the fuck out. Um, and every day it's like my anxiety is just going up and up and up. And it had been going up for a while, but now 2 weeks before the trip, it really reached some kind of breaking point where I really couldn't handle it anymore. I was just freaking out, just constant stress from waking up to going to bed. And I remember one day I was out for a walk with my dog, um, and my mind was just spinning, like, what the fuck am I gonna do? What the hell am I gonna do? And we stopped at this little stream where my dog liked to, like, kind of cool off, and she would lay down in the water. And as she was laying there, I would just look into the this kind of swirls in the water as it was breaking over the rocks and everything. And uh, it was really strange. It had this sort of hypnotic effect on me, maybe because of this intense state I was in, but I was just staring into the water, and I kind of just got lost in some kind of trance, just watching this water swirl around, and my mind was still spinning like a million miles an hour. But what happened was I started kind of thinking things through a little bit, like, okay, like, what are my actual options here? Option number one is, I could forfeit the trip, and just try again later. Better luck next time. That did really not feel satisfying, because I've been looking forward to this trip all year. Um, Option number two is I could say, fuck it, I'm gonna get on that plane no matter what, and just figure it out. I got some writing skills. I'm trained as a copywriter. If I take these like shitty SEO article writing jobs on some freelance board, I could make like $5 a piece for those. And if I do 10 of those a day, I'll at least make enough that I could survive. So that gave my mind some relief, I guess, where I realized that even if the worst case scenario happens, I'm not going to be dead, basically. Um, and somewhere along it's kind of a bit of a blur when I think back to it, to that moment. And I was kind of in a, in a blurry state anyway. But something just snapped there as I was looking into the water. And I remember it was just this amazing shift that happened inside me, that when I looked up and I saw the trees and the sun was shining and it was just like so beautiful. And I felt like a totally new person. And I couldn't explain it. I'd never experienced anything like that before. But when I walked home that day, I was in a totally different state. I was a totally different person when I walked home that day. Um, so I really felt that shift had happened within me somehow. Um, then what happened was the next day, I wake up and I had received a message from an online forum, based on a post I had made 3 years prior. This was when I had first announced my services as a copywriter. I was like this beginner copywriter. Um, and if any of you have been on an online forum, you kind of know what that looks like. Is somebody posts a thread, and if somebody else posts a thread, it pushes the first one down. And threads kind of get lost pretty quick. This thread was 3 years old. I have still to this day, I can't imagine how anyone would even find it 3 years later. But somebody had found it, and the post itself wasn't even that like appealing. Just some like newbie copywriter saying, "Hey, I'm a copywriter. Do you want me to write your copy?" It was like, not that interesting. But somebody had found it, wanted to hire me, um, and that was about I got about $1,500 for that. Um, the day after that, so 2 days in a row. So the next day, I get a notification on my Facebook. Um, Also, a post I hadn't even seen, but somebody else had tagged me in the comments. And it was somebody who was like entering the Swedish market, and they wanted a copywriter who could speak Swedish. They didn't want just a translator, but they wanted a translator who understood like the psychology of sales copywriting. Turns out there wasn't that many of us, and somebody I was acquainted with that knew about me had tagged me in the comment, and I ended up getting that job also for also about $1,500. So here I've gone several months just like breaking my head, filled with anxiety, not able to figure anything out, just totally lost and confused. And in the span of 2 days, here these two clients just fall out of the freaking sky, uh, with exactly the amount of money that I would need to go to Thailand. Um, so I got on the plane, um, landed here November 7th. So exactly 10 years ago today is when I moved to Thailand. Um, and then about 2 weeks into that trip, we get another call from another former client. um he had just closed this deal for doing a marketing project for $15,000 a month, and he calls up me and my business partner and he's like, "Hey guys, so I just got this deal. They're paying us 15K a month. Do you guys want to do like all the work and you can get half?" And we're like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." So that was another like 7,500 a month that also just came completely out of nowhere, um, all resulting from this shift that I had staring into some swirling water. Um, and that was really it was such a profound moment for me because it was so on the nose. It was like so obvious that this wasn't some kind of coincidence. If this is a coincidence, it's like way too much coincidence to be coincidence. Um, I'd already been familiar with ideas of manifestation for quite a while, but this was the first like real situation that really made it so obvious. And what I realized was, one, there's some mechanism behind this. Like, if there's anything that works, it must work in a certain way. There's a way that it works. There's a mechanism to it. In other words, there's rules to this shit. It's not just random. And the second thing I realized that if this is how things work, then it's also not selective. In other words, it doesn't just work sometimes. This is how everything must work. If manifestation is real, then every single moment must be a manifestation. So that's really what started my obsession. Just starting with that realization that holy crap, there's a way, there's a method to the madness. I've now pretty much spent the last 10 years of my life trying to figure all this stuff out. Um, so um, I'm just about to move into the actual model itself that I'm calling the manifestation engine. Um, Before I do that, I'd just like to mention that I don't want any of you to believe a single word that I say, because you'll never really get it that way. This is a self-provable system. The only way you'll really know it is to prove it for yourself. So don't believe me. These are just some of my kind of crazy thoughts, but um, once you apply it, once you see the model, you'll be able to understand your own life through this lens, and you'll be able to sort of track how events are unfolding in your life. So let me share my screen. So I hope you all can see that. Um, so let's start here on the left. We got the outer world. This is the world that comes in through your senses. So all the sensory data, visual data, auditory data, kinesthetic data, your outer environment. Um, this flows in, gets processed by your unconscious mind, the belief structure, the underlying belief structure. This is this mind that we've been talking about this whole time, that judges and calculates and does all these things. And based on what it determines, it generates sensation, emotion, and thought. Gut, heart, mind creates the landscape of your inner world. This inner world then expresses back outward, turns into action, turns into your behavior, your outward physical expression. So you'll notice that whenever you take an action, whenever you do anything, it's based on a combination of these things: thought, emotion, and sensation. Like, in order to, I mean, even if you're just a bit hungry, what if you're just hungry, but you don't have any thoughts? That energy has nowhere to go. So the feeling of hunger in combination with thoughts about sandwich, now those things can combine and you go to the kitchen and make a sandwich. But if you just have the thought of a sandwich, but without the feeling of hunger, now there's no energy driving it. And there's no motivation to go to the kitchen and make a sandwich. So you need both of those to come together. So the mind processes data, turns it into thought, emotion, sensation. These things combine, express outward into action. The action then informs the outer world, which then loops back into the mind. And we got this this flow going on. So I want you to notice that everything you've ever experienced fits somewhere along this flow. I bet you can't name a single thing that's ever happened that was not one of these things. It's either something you perceived outside or something you experienced inside. So it's almost like your whole experience of life is this constant like give and take, this flow of energy in and out, in and out. And it's just endless. It just flows. So using this model, you can basically troubleshoot any experience. I had a session last week with somebody who they're really into painting, and they'd been experiencing some like procrastination issues around that. And I kind of showed them this, and I asked them, when you think about doing your painting, how does it feel? Well, oh, there's this feeling of like frustration and this kind of like this heaviness. And well, it's like that's it, if that's the feeling that you have when you think about doing the thing you want to do, is there any mystery why you haven't been doing it? Probably. And he's like, oh, right, that makes sense. So this really takes the mystery out of that. So that's an easy way of understanding it with just the actions you take, but you can extend it even further and look at it even at the outer conditions in your life. Even if it's something that somebody else did that upset you. Why did it upset you? Because something that was going on in the mind didn't like it. And then it generated negative emotions, negative thoughts. And then it tries to do something about it in the form of some kind of action, which might be get away from that person or whatever it might be. Hit him with a baseball bat. I don't know. Um, as a way of understanding beliefs or the way things are being processed through here, if you think about a guitar, somebody's holding down their fingers to make a particular chord on the fretboard. Energy moves into the guitar strings. The fingers are essentially holding those strings at a particular vibration. So when the guitar strings are struck, energy moves through the guitar strings, and it causes a specific frequency of vibration, which we then perceive with our ears as a particular sound, which might be a nice, pleasant, harmonic sound, or it might be discordant and not so pleasant. So that's kind of how your belief structure works. We got these red arrows are basically the energy that's flowing. So as energy flows through this belief structure, it causes a specific vibration, a particular resonance based on what that belief is. Then that vibration, I want to bring this back to the topic of vibration again. So think of vibration as a musical note that gets translated through different octaves. You can think of them as almost like octaves of expression. The same vibration that was generated by the belief gets translated into thought, emotion, sensation. Gets translated through the gut, through the heart, through the mind, and then expresses outward. So as it expresses outward, this is the moment where that vibration gets translated into physical terms. Here it's mental, here it's emotional. As you take action on that energy, it translates into physical terms, meaning this is really when you amplify that energy even more in the physical 3D space. So yeah, this is what I just said. So let's look at some examples here. The exterior condition right here, somebody lost their job, gets processed through the belief structure. The belief says having a job is necessary for survival. This is a threat to safety, to security. Creates thoughts like, hey, I'm screwed. I won't have enough. All kinds of mental overanalysis, spinning thoughts. creates emotions like worry, anxiety, shame, guilt, which then begins projecting outwards towards the future, where the mind starts imagining these unfortunate future possibilities, unpaid bills, going to be homeless, all of this, right? Thanks a lot, mind, for putting those pictures in my head. Very helpful. And then those thoughts and emotions combine into an outward expression. The fear drives further fear-based action. The action always expresses the underlying belief. It can't not. That's where it's all coming from. So then you begin acting out of scarcity and neediness, desperation, and you'll either try to overcome it by force, initiating a desperate flurry of anxiety-fueled activity to either find a new job or generate some quick cash or whatever, or it tries to ignore it, get away from it, distract itself by all kinds of addictions and evasive tactics. Either way, inevitably, this leads to the new exterior conditions reflecting back the now increased inner state of turmoil. Let's look at another one. Let's say there's a fear of rejection. You've been wanting to talk to this girl or talk to this guy. Belief says approval is necessary for survival. Disapproval is a threat to survival. Being perceived as good or worthy and avoiding being perceived as bad and unworthy, also necessary for survival. And your experience is also filtered through the memory of every other experience of encountering a person and how they've treated you and all of this kind of stuff. These are probably some familiar thoughts. What do I say? How do I look? What do I do to get him to like me? Notice here how this lens of awareness flips inward, and kind of like a interrogation lamp pointed at yourself. You start scrutinizing every inch of yourself to make sure you're not doing anything that could lead you to being rejected or perceived as bad or perceived in any way that the mind doesn't want. Emotions, a mixture of fear and shame, probably. So the outward expression, here you got this survival mind holding up an image of what a total moron would look like, generating all of these feelings of shame and telling you, hey, don't do that. Let's avoid this threat. So again, it either tries to overcome it by force, somehow pushing through it, and inevitably, I don't know if you've had this experience, but leading you to express it in exactly the way you didn't want to. Have you ever tried to not be awkward? How did that work out? Or put tail between legs, walk away, which again further reinforces the underlying belief. So if we look back at this, you'll notice what most people do when they notice an exterior condition that they don't like. Mostly what they do is they try to control, they exert control, force, effort to control their action and behavior so that they get different outcomes. The problem with that is it does nothing about the underlying belief that caused this inner turmoil. So here we get into this sort of bro hustle culture, and you just gotta work hard and struggle. These are all the people who've gotten stuck here, essentially, in this kind of paradigm. Then we got people who maybe they learned about something like law of attraction, and they learned that you get what you think about. So now it's the same thing, but instead of trying to exert force here, they're exerting it here to try to control their thoughts and emotions. But still, we haven't really gotten to the root of it. We haven't really gotten to that underlying fear-based belief that led you to wanting to create the money or create the relationship or the six-pack abs or whatever it is. It's not getting to the root of it. Like, why are you not okay as you are is the root of it. So we really want to go back here. as much as we can. We clear the thing at the root in the unconscious, and then you'll find you'll automatically be thinking and feeling the way you want to feel, which naturally expresses as doing the things you want to do, which naturally translates into living the life you want to live. So that's essentially what I'm thinking of as the manifestation engine. And what goes along with that is what I'm calling the universal clearing technique. We'll get to that in a moment. But all that it essentially is following this energy backward. This is probably one of my greatest discoveries, is that this is a thing that's possible, that you can do that. You can start with anything. You can start with something you're looking at outside of you and say, I don't like that. And then you'll just follow that energy backwards, and you'll find the actions, you'll find the inner state, the thoughts and emotions underlying that, and you can then follow that emotion back, and you can get back to that underlying thing that caused it. It might be a belief, might be a trauma, might be something that happened in your childhood or something like that. As a simple example, if somebody got bit by a dog when they were 4 years old, that might create a belief that dogs are dangerous. So now every time they see a dog in their outer world, the mind says, better avoid that thing, generates fearful emotions and thoughts, expresses as action, run away from dog. So okay. Hope all of that makes some sense. I want to okay, so let's have a look at this. The anatomy of a downward spiral. I find one of the best ways you can really learn about manifestation is seeing how you've already manifested all the things you don't like. So instead of thinking about how can we get the big bag of cash or the six-pack abs, let's look at some stuff that your mind doesn't like to look at. So let's say somebody has broken through some kind of block. They achieve this burst of momentum. They think, oh my God, I finally did it. I'm free. Which then within moments is followed by another thought. Oh, I hope I can keep this up. I hope I can maintain this momentum. I hope things stay this way. We better hold on to this. Which you'll notice that's the fear talking. That's that same calculative mind, the dualistic, moralistic mind. This fear-based personality then begins attempting to control conditions and circumstances to secure this newfound state of being and kind of lock it in through time. So look at the mental process involved here. One, so things are going well now. There's satisfaction, there's pleasure, there's joy, all the good stuff. But you notice how this positive state is already attached to the condition of things going well. So now we need things to stay this way in order to be okay. So you're already on thin ice. You're already attaching your emotions to things you can't control. So now there's the fear of losing this wonderful new state. The mind conjures up an image of where the state has been lost and thinks, hey, we better avoid that. Just in the same way that the mind of a rabbit would show him a wolf to tell him basically, get away from that thing. Useful for rabbits, not so useful for humans. It's kind of like you're driving down the road and you're thinking, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. So now there's just this picture of a tree in your mind, and you just unconsciously start steering towards it. You actually see that quite a lot with children, which is kind of hilarious when they're like learning to ride bicycles and they put all of their attention into not driving into the light pole. And I do seem to recall some memory of driving into a light pole when I was learning how to ride a bike. So the mind begins to act on that fear, scheming and manipulating to avoid this fearful future. So again, acting is where you put your money where your mouth is. This is when that inner state gets translated into physical terms. It's a physical demonstration of your belief. You're sending a really powerful signal to yourself about your belief in this potentially disastrous outcome. Like if you didn't believe in it, you wouldn't try to protect yourself from it. So even trying to get away from something or protect yourself from it is confirming the belief in the thing you're wanting to avoid, which means you're still perpetuating it in your experience. Fear-based action leads to more fear. These fearful beliefs gets reflected back as these scary manifested conditions and circumstances, further cementing the fear-based belief, causing further fear-based action. And this cycle just keeps repeating itself. Each time it goes a loop around this cycle, it just kind of gets worse and worse. So again, the anatomy of a downward spiral. So it usually starts as some kind of whisper, and then there is a scream. And it gets exactly as loud as it needs to be in order for you to pay attention. Some sort of rock bottom is achieved. Anybody here ever had a kind of a rock bottom moment where you finally gave up? And was that a big catalyst for, yeah, I know you have, Vivian, and many others here. Yeah, so that's the kind of contrast that really teaches you how to focus. Usually that's what's required for people to move into that space of surrender. When you finally hit that wall where you realize there's nowhere else to go. There's nowhere else. The mind can't calculate any longer, like, where do we go from here? You're out of options and you give up, you surrender. And that's usually where that big breakthrough happens. So you'll notice how this downward spiral process follows exactly what we can think of, probably what you already know about manifestation. There's this vision, this imagined potential state of being. You're then believing in that. You're believing in the vision, and then you're acting on the belief, which translates into physical terms, further reinforcing and perpetuating that energy of it. What do all the manifestation gurus teach us? You have to imagine what you want. You have to believe in it. You have to act on the belief. Notice how you're already doing that all the time. Every action you take is an expression of something that you believe in. Every action is an expression of a belief. And that action, that energy will always reflect itself back to you. But what gets reflected back has much more to do with the underlying energy that's driving it, rather than the action itself. Fear-based action creates more fear-based conditions. So I want to make it clear how this, like, where things really shift is when you start to use this understanding as a way to actually navigate your life. When you stop acting on that fear is really step one. Stop making decisions based on fear. When you're about to do anything, check with yourself, where is this coming from? Am I doing this because I want more security, more comfort, more status, more approval? Do I want to get validation of some kind? It's usually not going to pan out so well, or it'll be like a kind of a kicking the can down the road. So I'll give you one example. This was a while ago. I had a moment when I was really super broke, and I noticed it was a particular day when I was at that point where I wasn't even sure if I was gonna eat tomorrow, and my mind was like freaking out. And I noticed this thought kept popping up, which said something like, "Hey, dude, maybe you should call your mom." Or or maybe this other friend could help you, maybe just a little bit so you can have some money to eat tomorrow. And it just kept giving me this thought like 40 times a day. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just stressing the hell out. And I'm realizing I think it was around the same time that I was kind of putting these ideas together. And I'm like, wait a second. So I'm having this thought. Here is my mind suggesting an action in order to deal with what it perceives as being a problem. So I realize if I call my mom or if I ask a friend to give me some money or borrow some money, then I'm just acting on that belief. Now I'm allowing that energy to translate outward into physical expression. So now I'm kind of caught in a bind where I'm realizing like I'm filled with anxiety and fear, but I'm realizing, oh, if I act on this, if I does what my mind is suggesting to me, I'm only going to make it worse, at least according to my own theory. uh, so I'm like, shit. I so what's really cool about that actually is it allows you to reach that kind of quote rock bottom place a lot faster because you can realize the futility of acting on the fear even before it gets that bad. Because that's how you ended up in the rock bottom situation in the first place. You kept acting on it, you kept acting on it, and got worse and worse and worse. It kept going around this loop. So now you can realize that oh, if I act on fear, it's only going to create more fear. So I decided to stop. And I just thought, hey, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and act on what I believe, how I believe the universe actually works. And I'm just going to let this go. YOLO. Fucking, let's see what happens. Um, and I think it was a day or two later that I signed a client for $1,000 that just popped in from nowhere. So it's kind of crazy to think, but I've been a copywriter and a marketing consultant for most of my career for the last decade before I started this coaching business about a year and a half ago. And my primary client getting strategy this entire time, people would always ask me, like, oh, what's your funnel? Or what do you do to get clients? And it's just like, they just kind of show up, you know? Um, Manifestation really is the way I've been able to put food on the table this entire time, which is kind of crazy to think about. Um, but yeah, so that's really like I just want to make this real for you to see how it applies in your life. So that's one example of that. And if you really think about it, you can place any experience that you've ever had and kind of run it through this thing and kind of map it out for yourself. So this is a way that you can understand your own experience to process things and really begin discerning how patterns unfold in your life. Um, Something I tell just about every client is to start paying attention. There's two different relationships that I want you to pay attention to. The first is the relationship between your thoughts and your feelings. And you'll notice they always match. You think how you feel, and you feel how you think. If you're feeling really angry, you're going to have angry thoughts. And if you have a bunch of angry thoughts, guess what you're going to feel? You're probably going to feel pretty angry. So I like to say emotions are like rooms. When you're in a room, it's like a room with no windows. You can't see outside of it. So if you're in this angry room, everything in that room is going to be colored by that state. Kind of if you're wearing red sunglasses, everything looks red. Um, and the walls of the room are made of beliefs or made of agreement. You could look at it that way. Um, so, um, okay. I think before I go any further, we're going to get into some practical application of this. We're going to go into the universal clearing technique. I'll be doing that with all of you. But is there any questions, anything that's not clear about what we have covered so far? Please raise your virtual hand if there is a question. Josh.
Yeah, I guess I mean, you know me, like I like to try and summarize, what
Yeah. Oh, you're
world
pretty
is.
good at that. Please go ahead. It would be
Am I?
useful for
I don't know. I hope
everybody.
I am. Oh, all right. Okay. So basically, what you talked about all this time is that whether it be a positive spiral or a negative spiral, the actions that we commit, they generally, are, you talk about like the guitar string. They are like us strumming the guitar, putting that out there, right? So, if I am walking down the stairs and I suddenly get this fear. I suddenly remember this one time I fell down the stairs. You're like, oh, I'm
Uh-huh.
just really falling down the stairs. Then all of a sudden, like you feel almost clumsy. You feel clumsy, like you're
Uh-huh.
about like like you're about to like walk down. You're trying to be super careful, and maybe you're really awkward. And ironically, you're more likely to fall down the stairs. So like
Uh-huh.
that, and so that's kind of generally the gist of it, right? Which is, the thought. You're in the situation, you think of a thought, and then you act on the thought, and then the outcome of that thought becomes a reality. That's a very
Yeah,
simple.
the only thing I'd like to correct a little bit is that taking the action is not the strumming of the guitar.
Okay.
Um, that's what happens automatically
Oh,
as things come in through your senses and interact with your
oh.
unconscious belief structure. So that experience of falling down the stairs when you were a kid, that's what
Yeah.
created that belief.
Mhm.
So now every time you see a staircase, that string gets plucked, if you will,
Yeah.
causing that vibration. Does that make sense?
Okay. Okay. All right. So I guess.
And
Oh,
then
so
it's that vibration that gets generated automatically that then
all right.
gets translated into thought, feeling, and sensation. Make sense?
Well, okay. So it gets translated into thought, feeling, and then sensation. I think I
Actually,
get
the
it.
other way around, sensation,
Okay.
emotion, then thought. Yeah.
Okay. I think I have
Yeah.
to look at that chart again, right? All right,
Yeah.
cool. Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Okay, cool. Uh, any other questions about what we have covered so far? Please don't ask me questions about something we haven't covered yet, but if there's anything not clear about what we've covered already. Okay. Looks like you guys all got it. Um, there's a pretty interesting conclusion that comes with all of this, um, which is there's really no need to try and manifest anything. Um, the manifestation of everything you want will be a natural consequence of basically unmanifesting everything all the unwanted conditions. So if you think about something in your life that's been troubling you, something that's been bothering you, something you've been wanting to fix or change or control, um, you'll notice that, like, you think about the situation, you'll notice there's sensations, you'll notice emotions, you'll notice thoughts. As you then trace those back to the underlying belief and clear the belief, now you'll be able to look at the same exterior condition without that emotion being triggered, which means that looking at this exterior condition now doesn't cause any kind of disturbance in your inner world. And because you create your own reality, that inner state is what's radiating outward. And now you're basically at a state of being okay, which means what flows out of that, thoughts, feelings, actions that feel good, leading to positive exterior conditions being reflected back to you. So the process of mastering manifestation, like, yes, visualization and journaling and these things, they have their place, but they're like, before you really before you clear those underlying things that causes the mind to just get upset about everything all the time, it really will have a quite minuscule effect in the long run, I think, um, because Everything that you even think that you want is informed by fear because you cannot, like, perception is based on your belief structure. That's what your beliefs is what causes perception. It's all based on that vibration that's generated through your beliefs. So from where you stand, you actually have no idea what you actually want beyond that fear. You can't know. You can't see outside of your belief system. So, like, if somebody wants to create more money, again, it's probably created by some fear of not having it. If somebody wants a relationship, it's probably created by some fear of not having it. So, because there's been that fear of not having it, that gets projected out as in the form of a desire. So the mind really thinks it wants this thing. But if the fear was clear, then so would the desire. So it's like following your desires a lot of times can be a trap because you're further investing energy toward the fear. You're actually confirming and perpetuating the fear by trying to move after the desire. So I find it much more productive to just look inside yourself, figure out why you're not okay as you are. And as you clear those things, then things kind of miraculously just happen around you. And the universe keeps surprising you and delighting you, and you end up with things you want before you even knew you wanted them. Um, which is really a much more fun way to live life, I think. Becomes like life really becomes this sort of magical adventure full of surprises rather than trying to like make goals and control every little condition to get what you want. Like, what if you always got what you wanted? What if every single thing you wanted, you just got it? Life would get boring pretty quick. Okay, you'd get the mansion, you get the six-pack abs, you get all your like laundry list of things that you want, and then what? That's a recipe for a midlife crisis. That's exactly why people have midlife crises, because they got all the things they wanted and they realized, I'm still not okay. What the fuck? What do I do now? And then finally, they maybe start looking into some like spiritual stuff. They got to look somewhere else for answers because where they were looking their entire freaking life wasn't the answer. Um, Lester Levinson, the originator of the Sedona method, when he had his he got told by the doctor that he had weeks to live. And this was a really smart guy. He was a very successful businessman. He was an engineer. He was a scientist. They said he had studied all the fields of man, like really smart, successful dude. And then he got told this by the doctor. They're like, hey, you better not walk upstairs too quickly. You might collapse and die at any moment. So he had to really start taking a hard look at himself and his life and what the hell was going on. And he said to himself, Lester, for a smart man, you are stupid, stupid, stupid. If the answers were in books, you would have found them by now. And I don't know about you guys, but when I heard that, that kind of hit me pretty hard because I've read quite a few books in my lifetime. Um, so I mean, check for yourself. Think about anything you ever wanted and check to see if that wasn't coming from some wanting of security, a wanting of control, wanting of approval, wanting of status, wanting of comfort. Those are the things that drive most people's desire. And where do all of those things come from? Fear of not having it, basically. Um, I really find this is where manifestation teachings often fail because they're used as a way, again, of escaping that fear. Um, so I'll share another little story. Um, this was maybe a couple years ago, and I was back in Sweden visiting my parents, and my mom was telling me they had this little like freelance content writing business, and she was saying, "Hey, I've made this new income goal. Like this is how much I want to make per month." And I asked her, "Well, Mom, um, why is that number important to you?" And she said, "Well, if we make that amount, then we can, cover all our expenses. We have plenty left over. We'll have much more freedom. We can do anything we want without really worrying about the money, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, well, why is that important to you? Um, and I probably asked, I forget exactly what she said, but I probably asked that like 3 or 4 times. And then when we finally got to the end of it, she's like, "Well, then I wouldn't have to be afraid anymore." Ah, there it is. So pretty much any goal you can think about, while on the surface level seems a lot like something you're kind of something positive that you're striving towards and wanting to get. But if you look at the underlying reasons, you'll find pretty much every single time that it's a wanting to move away from fear in some way or another. So, okay, let's get into what I'm calling the universal clearing technique. And I'm calling it that because it's really the thing that's been taught for thousands of years and is really just pointing out a movement, a particular type of movement, um, which is following this energy backwards. It's the movement of surrender. Um, and there's only really a few possible things that can be going on at any given time. You'll have thoughts, you'll have sensations, you'll have emotions, things you see and hear, feel, and that's about it. There's really nothing else that can be happening other than sensory impressions from the outside and then the internal reaction. That's all that's going on at any given time. And then you have you, which is the awareness watching all of that. Um, so when you can look at something, whether it's an external condition or an internal condition, when you can sit back and just watch it from a place of non-resistance, which means you don't have to do anything about it, is basically what that means. Then from your vantage point within your own perception, because you're in vibrational accord with whatever you perceive. So if you're watching something from a place of I'm okay right here, I don't have to do anything about that, you're literally informing the thing you're perceiving with that vibration. So just being able to handle whatever it is you're looking at without needing to do anything about it. And my RRT colleagues here in the room, they'll be familiar with this idea of nothing needs to be done, which is really the place we're trying to get to when we're doing one-on-one stuff, where the mind realizes, oh, there's nothing I need to do about this. Like if somebody's been feeling guilty about something they did 3 years ago, what's the guilt about? Well, the guilt is about the mind's trying to do something about to cause something to not have happened 3 years ago. So when the mind gets, oh, there's nothing that needs to be done, it stops generating that emotion. So the way to get there within yourself is by stripping away the layers of judgment and identification from the things you're perceiving within yourself. So you end up basically being able to watch what's going on within you the same way that you might watch the weather outside the window. It's just something that's happening. It's just what nature is doing at the moment. It doesn't mean anything about you. Um, so let's perhaps get into it. Um, let me just have a quick look to see if there's anything else. So, okay, yeah. So the universal clearing technique is basically this. You follow back any event, condition, circumstance to the point of its origin in your perception. And from there, you'll be able to fully illuminate how you've perceived this situation into existence, essentially. By that illumination, you see it anew. You're seeing it from a different vibrational state, which informs the thing you're looking at with that vibration. To put that in plain English, you basically go into wherever the pain is and you surrender to it. Sometimes it kind of feels like you're going into this dark dungeon, you're going into the deepest cavern to face the dragon. And there you face the dragon, you look it right in the eye, and then you drop your sword and shield. You drop your defenses and you surrender to the dragon. Um, this can be, it doesn't have to be that intense. I know some of my clients who are in this room have experienced that intensity as we process through certain things. Sometimes there can be even like a very like piercing, like burning sensation if it's some really heavy thing. And you'll find when that clears, there's this like explosion of energy that comes out of it. Um, with those things, it's like every bone in your body is like violently screaming at you to like, don't go there, get away from that. That is scary. But you just kind of go in there, and the moment where you surrender to it is where the whole thing shifts. Um, and the thing is, like, you have to get to the point where that makes sense as something to do, because you realize the futility of every other option. Meaning, if you attack the thing, you're confirming its existence. If you defend against it, you're also confirming its existence. So either attacking or defending will make the problem worse. When that becomes really clear, is also when it becomes clear that surrender is really the only way out of this. It's the only way off this freaking hamster wheel. Um, so you see very clearly that there's no possibility of running away, of hiding, of defending, of even ignoring it or attacking it. You realize there's nothing that is in your power to do to solve this from this level of mind. You realize your own powerlessness in this situation, that there's no way for your little human mind and your little human hands to do anything on their own. Whatever's going to happen is whatever's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. Once you get to that point, ironically, once you get to that point of total powerlessness, is when you find your true power. Um, two little quotes. And I find when we're talking about this idea of surrender, you'll find really a lot of beautiful wisdom in a lot of Christian teachings. I'm not a Christian by any means, but I've certainly got a lot of value from certain ways of thinking. Here is a quote from Father Richard Rohr, which I've gotten a lot of wisdom from over the last couple of months. And he said, we let God come to us the same way Jesus came into the world, into the place of the wounds and the place of the pain. And you'll notice if you look at the stories about Jesus in the Bible, what did he do? Like, what did he get up to? He wasn't hanging out in temples and churches so much. He wasn't really hanging out with holy men or like high status people so much. He was hanging out with like homeless people and prostitutes and the sick. He went to wherever the pain was. So that is, I find that just a great kind of metaphor for what we're wanting to do within ourselves. We go to wherever the pain is and we bring the light essentially to where the darkness has been. Another quote, this is from St. Augustine. He said, "In my deepest wound, I saw your glory and it dazzled me," which I thought that was just a hell of a line. Um, so let's do a little process. If you guys are up for that. Um, so what I'm going to ask you to do first is just think about any situation in your life that you've been wanting to change, that you've been wanting to control, something you wish were different. And as you think about that situation, I'll invite you now to close your eyes for a moment and just think about this situation. And you'll notice things arising within you. You might notice some tension, maybe a contraction somewhere in your body, maybe in your stomach or your chest or your throat, maybe your head, maybe somewhere else. You'll probably notice some kind of contraction. You'll also notice emotion. And of course, thoughts. It might be visual thoughts like images or pictures, could be auditory thoughts. Just notice whatever is arising as you think about that situation. And whatever is arising, see if you can just welcome that. And for a moment, just allow it to be there. Your mind's been wanting to get away from this thing. It's been trying to push it away, fight it, maybe hide from it or ignore it or something. It's been wanting to do something about it. But just for now, could you just let it be? And again, notice that sensation in your body. See if you can open yourself to that feeling even more. And if your mind wants to fight that, could you just welcome that as well? Just kind of notice and acknowledge, oh, here's the mind doing that thing again. And you'll realize that all those things going on within your awareness are just kind of things that you're looking at. I mean, really check. Are you any of that? Or are you that which is aware of it? When you really find yourself in that seat of pure awareness, notice how that requires no effort. Just like looking at a painting doesn't require any effort. Whether it's an ugly painting or a beautiful painting, it takes the same amount of effort to look at it. So that's all that you're doing. Are you that feeling? Or are you that which is aware of it? And then, once again, think about that same thing, that same situation, bring it to mind anew, and notice what's arising now. Thoughts, feelings, sensations. And notice how, whether they're different or the same. And whatever is arising, again, just welcome it. Allow it to be there. And then whatever emotion, whatever feeling is present, see if you can just drop into it even more. Just give yourself to it, open to it. As that's going on, you might notice other things arising in awareness, perhaps other thoughts, sometimes memories, things just coming to mind, thoughts, feeling, sensation. So you notice both what's arising, and you notice also any wanting to do anything about it. Notice whatever feelings going on in your body and any wanting to do anything about it. See if you can just welcome both of those things. Just let both of those things be there. I know for sure some of you are already feeling some energy moving within you, which I'm kind of picking that up from here. I don't know exactly where it's coming from. And then just drop into it even more. Yeah. And if there's any remaining holding on or holding back, just drop it. Could you just let go of your defenses? I'm imagining kind of like a soldier dropping his shield and sword, realizing there's no more point in fighting. Check for wherever it feels vulnerable or exposed. Check for that place your mind really doesn't want you to go because it feels a bit scary. Sometimes it can feel like kind of striking a nerve. So kind of scan for that place where it feels vulnerable. And you just go into it. You just fall into that. Might feel a bit like standing on the edge of a diving board and not sure if you can swim or not. That's how you know you're in the right place. Check for any tensions in your body. And take a few big breaths all the way into your belly. Noticing your current location in time and space. There you are, sitting in a chair, maybe lying down. There's nothing here to defend against. It's just some feelings, sensations, which is all just energy. And you're just looking at it. That's all that's going on. So could you let that just be okay? And one more time, bring up that same situation, that same thing you were thinking about, and notice how it feels now. And if there's any remaining sense of wanting to control it, could you simply let go of wanting to control it? That's not a command, by the way. It's not me saying, hey, could you pass the salt? It's checking. You're checking for the ability. Like, could you? Hey, I'm noticing my mind's been wanting to control that. Could you let go of wanting to do that? Could you be simply looking at whatever you're looking at without needing to do anything about it? And would you just allow what is to be? Could you give reality permission to be what it is just for a moment? If, in 5 minutes from now, you want to go back to wanting to change it and control it again, that's fine. But just for now, just for this moment, could you just let it be? And then just take your own time. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. All right. Cool beans. Um, is there anyone who would like to share something about what they just experienced or have a question about what you just experienced? Oh, thanks, Vivian. That's amazing. Anybody have a question or anything they would like to share? Ollie,
Yeah, um, that was really cool. I really
thanks.
like that.
Awesome.
Uh, you know, just sort of, yeah, like obviously I've, done stuff with you before, but I think um the just sort of feeling the fear like fall away like that is really cool when you're just sort of
Mm-hmm.
really looking right at it,
Right.
Um, yeah, it's a powerful process for sure.
Very cool. Yeah, I find, you really just you just kind of stare at it for long enough and it kind of just dissolves. Um,
Yeah, you feel kind of like invincible almost because it's like when you then come when you come at it for a second time, right? It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, it didn't get me the first time and now it's even weaker. So, you know, um,
Right, right. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember when I've been processing through some like really heavy shit, I've just been like laying in bed doing this like for hours and just bringing it back and going into it and um but yeah, this process, right?
Um,
Like the actual language we used here, I will have to give some credit where credit is due. A lot of that is from Sedona method, specifically the way it's taught by Hill Dwoskin, and that's just because I don't know. I've listened to thousands of hours of that stuff in my early 20s. So that's just kind of burned into my brain, the specific languaging of it. But at the same time, the reason I'm calling it the universal clearing technique here is like I really don't see it as much of a technique as the direction of movement of your awareness, if that makes sense. And the words are just kind of guiding towards that. But you can do it without any words. You just drop into the emotion and follow it backwards. And if you go deeply with it, you can also access even things like traumatic memories and things like that. Like everything that's connected to that vibration will get pulled up to the surface so you can process and clear it. Um, Leonie says, I felt a huge rush of energy and emotion release when I actually just let myself be with it. Yeah, exactly. Um, so you'll notice the reason an emotion stays stuck is because of this whole wanting to do something about it, the resistance to it. Um, when when you can just let it be, that energy is allowed to flow through, and it just dissolves. Um, One way of thinking about this that I've started kind of adopting recently, which I heard from Michael Singer, who's he has a bunch of really great talks on YouTube. But he was saying like, can you handle it? Whatever moment is presenting itself in front of you, can you handle it? And if you can't handle it, what does that mean? Like the definition of can't handle it is you need to do something about it. If you can't handle it, you need to do something about it because you can't handle it. So whatever's going on, can you handle it? Um, so you can do this process, whether it's, clearing your annoyance at the guy in front of you who is driving too slowly. Like it'll work for like start with the easy stuff, right? Um, Once you kind of get the hang of that, then you can kind of move on to the bigger stuff. It's taken like I've now gotten to the point where I'm surrendering to like major life decisions. But it didn't start that way. It started with the small stuff where that gave me the evidence. And again, like what I said in the beginning, like don't believe a word I say, prove it for yourself. That's the only way you really have the confidence to start living this way is when you've proven it to yourself enough times, when your brain has gotten enough evidence, like, oh, if I do this, it'll work. Um, so you'll see the results of it when you practice it with the small stuff, then you graduate to the big stuff. So I really wouldn't suggest you start with like these big things like money or relationships, these things that are so kind of deeply anchored in most people's belief systems that all kinds of conditioning, like early childhood conditioning attached to it, all these like security oriented things or relationship oriented things. Like you can do that, but it's like pretty complicated. Start practicing with some simple stuff first. um the guy in front of you at 7-Eleven was taking too long, like putting his change back or something. Like start with that one. So yeah, there's basically two basic ways that you can live your life. The first is you can look at what's happening around you and decide what you like and what you don't like, and then try to manipulate and control all the conditions and circumstances so you get them the way you like them to be. Um, that's what most people are doing. And that's precisely what doesn't seem to work so good. Um, the other way is you move toward. You go in, you find what the underlying thing is that says, I'm not okay if things aren't the way I want them to be. You go into that and you figure out how can you be okay no matter what's going on around you. Um, Oh yeah, I forgot to finish the freaking story from before about my mom. I made kind of a half a point with that, which was we got back to that core fear of she said, then I don't have to be afraid anymore if I reach this income goal. What I forgot to tell you is that after that, she went into a meditation and went into that fear that was uncovered. Um, and she had a really powerful release happen. And about 4 days later, they got the biggest writing contract they ever got. It was worth about $20,000, which just happened like that about 4 days later after she did something very similar to what we just did today. Um, so yeah, I forgot to tell you the whole point of that story, but there it is. Um, so as you move forward, um, with this way of thinking, and you don't have to think this way, as you move forward through your life, but if this is something that you're wanting to do, what's going to happen, in my experience, and from what I've seen kind of unfolding with the lives of my clients as well, is reality will show you exactly what it is you need to address next within yourself, because your life is a manifestation. It is a perfect mirror of your inner state. So whatever is presenting itself to you that you don't like so much, that's the like limiting belief to go for next, and it'll present itself in perfect order. Like it'll present itself exactly as you're ready for it. I've had several conversations with clients just this week about there's something like big that's happened recently that's caused some turmoil. But when we really look at that together, we find that, oh, it actually makes sense for this thing to be popping up right now at this specific juncture in your journey and in your process. Because, if this had happened a year ago, you really wouldn't have been able to handle it. But now, because of the growth and development that's happened, you're now at a point where this is something you can deal with. So it makes perfect sense why this is coming to the surface now. So all that to say, you really don't have to go and like look for your limiting beliefs. There's all kinds of people teaching how to find your limiting beliefs and how to journal and dig those things up out of yourself. Um, I find there's no need to do that. And a lot of times I think it's just kind of mental masturbation more often than not. But because your beliefs are always manifesting themselves, you don't have to look for them. Whatever is going on in your life that doesn't feel so good, that's the limiting belief to work on next. Um, and it'll present itself in perfect order. So this way, really, your life becomes your teacher. Your life becomes your coach. If you have the right way of thinking, the right model for understanding what is happening and what to do about it, which is everything we just went over today. And finally, the the real turning point I find is when you draw that line in the sand and you say, I'm no longer going to act based on fear. When you see this pattern unfolding in your life, when you see this, what I'm calling the manifestation engine, when you see these patterns, when you notice these fearful thoughts, when your mind is screaming at you to go and do something in order to protect yourself or avoid the thing that doesn't feel good, you're like, oh, like we're going to draw a line in the sand right here. I'm not going to act on this fear. Um, and yeah, let me think if there's, yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm done, guys. Uh, any questions, thoughts, comments?
I don't know,
Thank you,
just
Jocelyn.
real quick, just real
Yeah,
quick. What is truth, Wallace Waddles? Something
Wallace
really neat
Waddles.
that, yeah, that it told me was that the universe is always trying to help you. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're feeling all these negative things, you're actually acting against the universe. And by doing this activity and getting to know you and all these folks in here and everything. I feel like the universe is helping me. So, amen.
Amen to that. Wallace Waddles. That's the classic right there. Perfect. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, Josh. I'm glad you got some value out of this. Um, I guess last thing before we get off, if there is any interest in continuing this work further, I'm kind of half planning starting a little community where we continue doing this work together, where it would be basically weekly sessions, kind of like this, but less theory and more just implementation. We'll get on a call like this every week. We'll create a platform with what I think is going to be the best trainings anywhere on the internet, and just an ongoing kind of manifestational co-creation where we do this work together. And I've been wanting to create a more kind of accessible way for me to work with people other than just one-on-ones. But this is also, I'm not doing this to like sell you guys a bunch of shit. So if you'd like me to talk about that, then please raise your hand if you would be open to participating in something like that. And I'll tell you guys a little more about it. Vivian, Josh, Sammy, awesome. Tell us, Leonie. All right. Okay, guys. So yeah, so I'm only gonna do this if I kind of get enough people who are interested. I'm just wanting to check with you guys, but let me once again share my screen. Um, this is kind of some thoughts I've been cooking up for the Manifest Momentum community. These things I was just saying, and ongoing manifestational co-creation, supporting you in precisely what's going on in your life at any given moment. So as we get on one of these sessions, we'll have the model. Here are the conditions. Here are the beliefs. Here are the thoughts about it. And we just clear those things. And each week you'll get a little shift, a little upgrade, moving you into the next level. There will be a community where you can go in, you can ask questions, you get access to me. Will be also a guided, a toolbox kind of guided meditations and processes and things like that that you can go in and access anytime, including a guided meditation for the universal clearing technique that we just did today. Weekly live coaching. I'm also including a free one-on-one for the first 12 people who sign up. That's a $222 value. And I'm also doing a 4-day implementation workshop of exactly the kind of work we've been doing today. So again, more implementation and less theory. We're actually going into your mind and causing shifts in real time. And this would be a $55 per month commitment, which, considering just the one-on-one alone, this is a complete no-brainer of a steal. So let me know how that sounds to you guys. And I will put Vivian is in. Michaela is in. It's fantastic. I just made this little school group literally 30 minutes before we got on this call. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now. There's literally nothing on it, but what's going to be in there is everything we just went over today, or that I just went over here. So you can go to that link and you can sign up. If you're one of the first 12 people, you'll get the one-on-one session as well. And everyone who signs up will also get this 4-day implementation workshop. And if anybody has any questions about that, now would be a good time to raise your hand. Vivian. You are muted. If you're talking, then I can't hear you. Oh, all right. Okay, guys. Unless there's any other questions, I guess we are done for today. Any last questions, comments, thoughts before we wrap up for today? And feel free to, I guess most of you in here have me on like the DMs. So if there's any other question, please reach out. And the link to the new community will also go out to the email. Thank you, Nan. Thank you, Wael. Thank you, Sammy. Nice to see other like-minded souls in this great universe. Yeah. This was really cool for me because I've been on calls with most of you guys before, but I never had all you in a room together at the same time. So this is fucking sick. That's awesome. Thank you, Yim. Awesome. I think Mishi might be the first person in the community. That's fantastic. Amazing. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for today. Thank you so much for joining. It was the first time I did anything like this. I hope you got some value out of it. Much appreciation for you all showing up. If I had to talk to an empty room, that would have been a lot less fun. So thank you all for being here. And I guess I'll see all of y'all real soon again. So thanks all for today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody.